Hey everyone, let's wrap up May. This is where I wrap up all the videos I uploaded and all the books I read in May. So let's start with the videos. We had a super interesting discussion about chapters. I told you that I really prefer short chapters to longer chapters, and basically no chapters is the best thing ever. But that led to you guys telling me what you prefer, and also a discussion of chapters and why they're there and how they influence our reading. And I really loved that discussion. Thank you very much for doing that. We also had a super good discussion about belonging on BookTube and eclectic reading. Like I said, that my eclectic reading doesn't really give me one niche where I properly belong on BookTube, but that I feel more at home in many different communities among the BookTube community. And I loved your response to that, how a lot of you said you feel comfortable switching between communities as well, even though you feel more at home in a narrower reading area. But I really like to read how a lot of you classified themselves in different reading tastes where you see yourself, and that was super interesting. Thank you very much for discussing with me. The last non-review videos I uploaded was the BookTube watching tag and my letter to May. Thank you all for your comments there and watching, and yeah, generally, thank you for still sticking with me after all this time. On to the books I read. May was a very good reading month, mostly due to the fact that I stopped job hunting and had a lot of extra time to read and yeah, just enjoy books. So I finished the big chunker that I'd been carrying around since February, We the Drowned. I ended up really not liking it towards the end. It started off really well. The writing is super beautiful, super well done. But towards the end, since it spans so much time in the city and many lives, I got bored with what was happening, and also I liked the characters or the people we focused on in the beginning a lot more than towards the end. There is a review up for this book. The next physical book I want to talk about is My Lady's Choosing, and this is a choose-your-own-adventure romance novel set in Regency England, and this is so much fun. There are short stories in general, but you can choose many ways. You decide which direction you go, and you can have an adventure with a Mr. Darcy type guy, or with a lady, or with something like Mr. Rochester. I'm not really sure where the Scottish man goes, but this was a lot of fun. There are so many stories, so many romances, so many, well, there are some sexy scenes, and I enjoyed it. It was a fun read, and it's easy to pick it up for one story, put it aside, and read another story later. Also, there's a video up for this one. I also read my first Thomas Hardy, although it was just 2 short stories, The Withered Arm and The Thieves That Couldn't Stop Sneezing. These are 2 short stories in these little black penguin books, and I like them. I like the writing, I like the ideas. They were kind of funny, kind of addressing things, and made you think, but you know me in short stories. Not really clicking. I really enjoyed All My Puny Sorrows. This is a book where I feel always bad saying I enjoyed it because it's all about suicide and loss and dealing with, yeah, basically life not being what you expect it to be. But I really enjoyed the writing. I really loved how the characters were portrayed, how the book made you think about suicide and how people deal with life when they don't like life. Yes. It sounds weird, but it is like that. It also addresses the fact a lot about how the family and the people around those people that attempt suicide deal with life and their situation. And there's a full review up for this. I really don't know how to put all my thoughts into one precise sentence. It's just, I enjoyed it. It was a good read. It really made me think. I also DNF'd a book in May. See Out the Crazy Times is a book that promises stories of the Second World War and people's experiences and the stories afterwards. What it actually feels like reading is like you sit around with your grandmother and she tells you stories from the war, which is nice if you don't have a grandmother who told you things like that, or if you don't have family that experienced that, or you have never experienced anything personally around World War II. But it's not a well-told story. It doesn't really give you a proper narration. It really jumps from scenes to scenes and memories. It really feels like memories that people have that the author collected. So I really did enjoy reading it. Let's go to audiobooks next. I finished 3 audiobooks. Rindy was a really long story by Neil Stephenson, and I thought it was too long and really lost my interest halfway through. I think it was partly due to the story that it changed from what the outset was, like a multiplayer game and some malware and ransom things going into kidnapping and just basically hunting the kidnappers. I lost interest in the characters and the story, so it was okay, it was well written, and it probably needed all the time, but yeah, didn't catch me. Also a review up for that one. I also listened to Null States. This is following up Infomocracy, and while I loved Infomocracy and recommended to anyone, really loved that, I really didn't click well with Null States, and I think it was mainly because the main characters weren't the same as in the first book. The story was a lot more political, a lot more going on there, and diving more into this topic of the micro-democracy, and it was super interesting, but I couldn't really care for the main players in this story, so I don't really know. I hope the third one, there is a promise of a third one, will deal with the characters I liked from the first one more again. The last audiobook I listened to had me finish the Pillars of Reality series, and I'm kind of glad that the series is done, because I got a little bit more bored with the story as it went along, and this last book was a lot of war and politics, so not that interesting, but it really makes a great ending for the whole thing, and I put up a series review trying to get you to get into the characters and get into the world, and I recommend it, despite it being 6 books where not every book is great. Like I said, it was a good reading month. I also read 3 ebooks. Well, sort of 1 big one and 2 shorter ones. I read The Dark Days Club, which is a Regency fantasy supernatural story with Lady Helen coming out, being presented to the Queen and having her first season to get married, while also discovering that she has some supernatural powers and learning more about the supernatural world in her London 1812. And yeah, I liked it. It was very drawn out at point. It's a 500-page book, so you have time to really dive into the characters, into the world, and into the situation for a young woman in 1812 London who comes out and needs to find a husband to escape her dependency of her uncle, and yeah, basically to live and be respected. And I really enjoyed that part of the story just as well as the action scenes and the supernatural parts. The second ebook is really more a short story, which is also part of the Dark Days Club series, and it's one of the scenes in the book presented to you from a different point of view, and I really enjoyed that and made me want to have more of the scenes presented from that point of view, but not out yet. Well, the last book I read, I just flew through in a day. It was How to Marry a Werewolf by Gail Carriger. And you know me and Gail Carriger, I love her writing, I love her characters. This is one story more about the London Pack. It's one of her novellas, it's about 200 pages, and we follow Major Channing of the Chesterfields Channings. And it is so much fun to see him fall in love, of course, because her novellas are romance side stories to the main stories and focusing on the side characters. And I really enjoyed learning more about Channing and more about the characters. This time we have a young woman come from America to London to get married, and it is so much fun to read about that. As usual, I highly recommend you check out Gail Carriger. And that was my May. Like I said, I had a really good month. A lot of good books, fun stories, long stories, short stories, different formats, and good discussions with you guys. June, we'll see life changing again as I started my new job, and so far I had 1 day and I loved it, but it's basically, I have to get used to working again. I have some plans from June, but basically I think I will need time to adjust, and I apologize if there will be less videos and less reading going on. I hope by July I will have figured everything out. So that's what's going on here. Let me know in comments how your May was. Did you have such wonderful weather as well as we did, or did you get a lot of good books down, or did you have bad ones? Let's talk in comments. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.